Hi everyone, my name's Dan, I'm from Moving Mountains. We're absolutely devastated not to be at Family Fest today, but obviously in current circumstances that isn't going to happen. So instead we've got a little bit of a bushcraft demonstration for you, show you guys how to get a fire lit without using matches. So first thing we need in order to have fire is some fuel. And today we're going to be using wood. We're located here in our lovely woodland area up on Kelston Roundhill near Bath. Now, when we talk about firewood, there's three things that we want our firewood to be. The first one is dead. There's no point burning live sticks with lots of leaves on it. You're just going to end up with lots of smoke and very little fire. So we want our wood to be dead. We also want our wood to be as dry as we possibly can. Anything that's been left on the ground or out in the rain, we're really going to struggle to burn. And the third thing we want our wood to be is the right size. There's no way that I'm going to take a match or a fire steel and immediately set fire to something like this. So we're going to start off with some really small wood. The wood that we start our fire with we call kindling. So this is a pile of kindling. It's wood that's up to about the thickness of a little finger. It's all really dead. Most of this is either ash or beech, so it's a wood that's going to burn fairly well. And we want about enough of it to hold in our hands like that. We're also going to make sure that we've got the wood ready to keep our fire going, because there's nothing worse than getting a fire lit and then having to run away and get wood and find that the fire's gone out in the meantime. So once we've burnt our kindling, once our kindlings are light, we're going to move on to the next size of wood. And this is stuff up to about thumb thickness. We want 2 or 3 times as much of this stuff. And then once we've got that burning, we can gradually work up through the different sizes of log. Because we're really well prepared today, we've made a wood pile of all our woods graded by size. And it's always worth doing that if you can, and that way you're ready to go. Don't put it right next to your fire, because you don't want your fire to spread, but you do want it close enough that it's ready to hand and good to go. Today we're going to be lighting the fire using what's called a fire steel. This is one of our fire steels. There's various different designs and brands available. And these work by producing a really hot spark that will help us to get our fire going. There's a few reasons why we prefer these rather than matches. I'm sure at some point you've all had a box of matches that's got wet or fallen apart in your pocket. These don't have any of these problems, so this will still work whether it's dry like this or just dunk it in our little fire bucket of water here. You'll all agree that's soaking wet at the moment. You can just wipe it off, give it a couple of strikes, and it will carry on working. That's the real reason why we suggest these for any kind of outdoor or bushcraft use rather than matches. Now I could take my fire steel and I could sit here all afternoon sending sparks into my pile of kindling and not a lot's going to happen. And that's because there's one more size of fuel that we use before our kindling, and that's something called tinder. Now, there's various natural things that we can use as tinder. So we could use sense of like plants that have seed heads that are all fibrous. If you're out in the countryside, if you find wool that's on a hedge that sheep have left behind, really dry, fine, thin grass. There's a tree called a silver birch. You probably recognise it from its sort of greyish silver bark. That bark peels off in really thin sheets, and you can use that as a tinder. Today we're going to use something that's man-made. And that man-made tinder that we're going to use today is cotton wool. So I'm going to take a piece of cotton wool and I'm going to fluff it up a little bit to make sure there's plenty of air in there. It's for fire to burn, as well as our fuel and our heat source. We need oxygen. And that will simply light using a fire steel. Always good when it happens first time on a video.
Absolutely wonderful.
So that lights quite easily, doesn't give off that much heat. So I can sit and I can put my hand pretty much right over that and I'm not going to hurt myself. It also goes out fairly quickly. So there's something else that we're going to add into that cotton wool just to give us a little bit more of an advantage and make sure that our wood catches fire today. And it's another product, just like the cotton wool, that you've probably got in your bathroom cabinet at home. Vaseline or petroleum jelly. It doesn't need to be a big tub like this. You can get the little tins that you use for sort of on your lips. All absolutely the same stuff, absolutely fine to use for this. I'm going to take a piece of cotton wool, going to smother it in some Vaseline. And then I'm loosely going to wrap another piece of cotton wool around it. Reason for that, just stops the Vaseline ending up all over my flint and steel. I'm going to place that down in the middle of my fire, and that's going to be my fire lighter. Now, there's various different fire structures that we can build. You've probably all seen the pyramid style. We're going to build something today called the Jenga fire. You can get a couple of reasonable sized sticks and place them either side, ready to go. I'm going to have my kindling to hand. I'm going to grab my flint and steel. I'm going to light the cotton wool, and then I'm going to build my kindling up over the cotton wool in a crisscross sort of pattern. So a few that way, and then a few this way. Just going to keep slowly building that up, and as your fire starts to build up, what you're listening for is a crackling noise. So if you imagine the sound that it makes when you pour your milk onto your Rice Krispies in the morning, it's almost exactly the same noise. And that's the sound of the water in the wood starting to boil and the wood starting to catch fire. I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera, but I can just start to hear that sound now. I should say, when we're lighting a fire, there's one thing that we will always have with us, and that is some water, just in case either the fire gets out of hand or someone manages to burn themselves on the fire. We would always say make sure that you have some water to hand before you even think about lighting a fire. So again, I don't know if it's picking up on the camera. I'm starting to hear that crackling now, so I know that the start of that wood is just starting to catch fire. I'm just going to keep building up my fire a little bit. Now, out in the wild, there's various reasons why we might want a fire. The obvious one is to cook food. We might want it to boil water to sterilise it to drink. We might just want to keep warm of an evening around the campfire. We might want to signal for help if we were stranded somewhere. And each of those fires would have slightly different qualities. The fire I'm building today is going to be a standard cooking fire. So we're going to build it up, and then we'll let it burn down into a bed of embers. Okay, so my kindling's well alight. I've got some really good flames here. So I'm going to start adding some slightly thicker wood. Now, we're filming this a weekend before the event, so I don't know what next weekend's weather's going to be like, but there's nothing quite like lighting a blazing fire on a 32-degree day in the hot sun. So if I look a little warm sat around the fire, that's because I am. Keep building this up slowly. You'll see that I've now started with these larger sticks to lean them against the fire. Now, we're in quite an exposed location up here with the wind. At the moment the wind's blowing in this direction. You can see that from the fact the flames and the smoke are all coming out this side of the fire. So as I build the fire up, I'm going to focus on this side where the heat is, so that the flames and the heat get to the wood that I'm putting on. If I put too much on this side of the fire, all I'm going to do is block the air from getting in. And the easiest way for a fire to fail is by not allowing enough air into the fire. And as my thumb-sized bits of wood start to catch, now I'm going to start going up to some slightly larger stuff. You'll see as I'm adding wood, I'm just placing it on the fire, so I can still get very close to this, as long as I approach from the same side that the wind's blowing from. I can get my hands in really close and just place wood on. If I start throwing wood at the fire, well, for a start, my cameraman's going to jump backwards as the fire goes flying towards him.
Please don't.
I'm also likely to knock the fire out. Okay, I'm just going to let that start to build up. So, we're running a bit low on time now, so we're going to leave that fire to carry on building up. Hopefully you'll enjoy whatever you're up to this weekend. And we really look forward to being at Family Fest next year, hopefully with some archery, some axe throwing, and maybe a couple of other activities for you as well. In the meantime, stay safe and have a good time.